Hi there, Mr. Muhammed is here. This is Oxford Complete Mathematics, Unit 6.4, page 222, question 13. The question says, draw the graph of y equals to sine of x plus 1. Then, to do the graph of this function, we need to firstly draw the proper axis, as the question says. Give 5 centimeters to each unit on y-axis. It means from here to here is 5 centimeters, and this is another 5, and to the 3 is another 5, and we give 1 centimeter to each 10 degrees, as the question says. So here we have 1 centimeter, 10 degrees, 20, 30 degrees. So this distance is 3 centimeters up to 30 degrees. Another 3 centimeters, 60, another 3 centimeters, 90, another 3, all the way to 180. That's how we made the proper xy axis to draw the graph of this function y equals to sine of x plus 1. And before we start, one more thing, we need to know sine of x normally like this. The graph of sine of x is between -1 and 1 on y-axis. So sine of x, the graph is between -1 and 1. What about 2 sine of x? 2 sine of x, the graph will be between -2 and 2. What if we have something like this, 2 sine of x, which has the graph between -2 and 2, then plus 1 more. This plus 1 will make the graph of this function to be between -3 and 3. That's why I marked until 3 on the y-axis. And one more thing is this domain. The question says draw the graph of this function between 0 to 180. Sine works even when we exceed 180, and it still works when we pick angles that are negative, less than 0. So that's why we need to have a domain like this from 0 to 180. And then we draw the graph, which is like one pattern of the graph. Now we got the result why we set up the xy axis like this, and what is the use of this range here. So okay, to do this, just like graphing any other equation, it's better to follow the table method. Then these are the values of x, these are the values of y. The values of x, when the question says between 0 to 180, the values of x are these numbers. These numbers are the values of x. From 0 all the way to 180 will be the values of x. So we start by substituting 0 in place of this x and see what will we get. We will get, if we put 0 in place of x, we will get 2 sine of 0 plus 1. Sine of 0 is equal to 0. Then 2 times 0, sine of 0 is 0. When we multiply it by 2, the result will stay 0. Plus 1, it's equal to 1. So when we put 0 in place of x, we will get 1 for the y value. After 0 we have 30. So let's put 30 in place of x and see what will we get. We will have 2 sine of 30 plus 1. Sine of 30 is equal to 0.5, and 0.5 times 2, 0.5 times 2 is equal to 1 plus 1, it will be 2. So we have 2 sine of 30 plus 1, which is equal to 2. After 30 we have 60. Then for the 60 we will have 2 sine of 60 plus 1. This is equal to 2.73 2.732. For simplicity, we can just say 2.7 and 90. If we put 90 in place of x, we will have 2 sine of 90 plus 1. Sine of 90 is equal to 1 times 2, it will be 2, plus 1, it will be 3. Let's check with calculator. 2 sine of 90 plus 1. 2 sine of 90 plus 1 is equal to 3. Okay, now here is a question. You might ask why we don't have 120, 150 and 180 in the table. Then how could we plot their points to make a proper graph? Then there's one thing that we learned in the previous lesson. The angles that they add up to 180 together, they have the exact same sign. That's why you see 0 plus 180 is equal to 180. So it means the result of 0 in the table, which is 1, is exactly the same as the result of 180. 30 plus 150, they add up to 180. 30 plus 150, they add up to 180. It means the result of 30 is exactly the same as the result of 150. Similarly, 60 and 120, they add up to 180. So the result of 60 will be exactly the same as the result of 120. And 90 is alone, then here is 90 in the table. Now let's start plotting the points we have from the table, and then join the points, we see the graph. The first point is 0, 1. 0 in x is here, 1 in y is here, so 0, 1 is this point. Then we have 30 with 2. 30 is here, 2 is there, so here is 32. 60, 2.7. Look, each small square here represents 0.2. So this is 2, this is 2.2, this is 2.4, this is 2.6, and this is 2.8. What we need is 2.7. 2.7 is between 2.8 and 2.6. So 2.7 is halfway here. Okay, to plot this point, 2.7 is here, 60 is on this line, so here we go, here's the point. 90 and 3. 90 is here, and 3 is right here. Then 120. 120 plus 60 is equal to 180, so the result of 120 and the result of 60 are exactly the same. You can check this with calculator. 150 and 30, they add up to 180, so they have the exact same result. That's why their points, they both opposite 2. 180 with 0, they have the exact same result, so it is right here. Now we got the points. If we join these points all together, we will get the graph of the function 2 sine of x plus 1. Now let's roughly join them. The graph looks like this, and then we're going to answer part A and part B about this function. Part A is about 2 sine of x plus 1 is equal to 2.3. Now using this graph, where does this result is equal to 2.3? Then let's find the position of 2.3 and then use it to get the angle, because the x is the angle, which is the solution. Now 2 is here, here is 2.2, and here is 2.4. 2.3 is halfway between 2.2 and 2.4. Then it is something like this. Let's use this to see where does this crosses the line and which angle can be the best answer. So here is the answer, this angle. So can you guess what is this angle? This angle here is 30, because we are going by 10, 30. This is nearly 40, 41, 40.5. They are all acceptable because all of them, they give a result too close to 2.3. Here is 40, 50 is here, and this is 60. So the result of part A, x could be equal to 40, and since it's sine, there are two angles that they give the same result. So 40 plus which number will be 180? The other possible solution is 140, because 40 plus 140 together they add up to 180. That's why they give the same result. So we got the answer of part A. Now part B. Part B says 1 over the function we have 2 sine of x plus 1. It must be equal to 0.5. Before we jump to the graph, think about this. 1 divided by which number will be equal to 0.5? So definitely this part must be equal to 2, because only 1 over 2 is equal to 0.5 when we have 1 on the top. Then it implies that this 2 sine of x plus 1 must be equal to 2. Then we can make this equation correct. Now we have the graph of this. We have the graph of this one, 2 sine of x plus 1. Let's see where does this equals to. The graph here, opposite 30, it lands on 2, and opposite 150. So it has two possible solutions. Then the answer here is x equals 30 gives this result to be equal to 2. When we get this 2, 1 over 2 of course is equal to 0.5, or x could be 150 degrees. These are angles. So question 13 done. We answered part A, we answered part B, and we did the graph. I hope you find it easy. Comment below whatever question you have. Now let's move on to question 14. Question 14, this time we are going to draw the graph of this function y equals 2 sine of x plus cosine of x, and again the angles should be between 0 and 180. That's why I used the exact same scale of the xy axis. Here, from here to there is 5 centimeters. This is another 5 centimeter, another 5 centimeter as the question says, and these are the angles between 0 all the way to 180. Let's make a table for this function and start plotting the points. So these are x values, y values. Before we start substituting, think why this graph is between 3 and negative 3, because 2 sine will be between 2 and negative 2. Cosine is between 1 and negative 1. Together they will be between negative 3 and 3. But we are going to only draw the side which is between 0 to 180 on x-axis. That's why we just draw the positive side of x-axis. Although this function, because it contains sine and cosine, they work even here in negative angles, and they work even when we exceed 180 degrees, because they are continuous functions and they are like waves, endless functions. Now we start by substituting 0 in place of x, and let's see what will we get for the y. If we put 0 here, we will have 2 sine of 0. 2 sine of 0 is equal to 0 plus cosine of 0. Cosine of 0 is equal to 1. So when we put 0 in place both x's, we will get y is equal to 1. You can use calculator to get the result. Then next is 30. Then if we put 30, we will have 2 sine of 30, which is equal to sine of 30 is 0.5 plus times 2. It will be 1 but the way you do should be like this, since calculator is allowed, so use it to your best. Then we have 2 sine of 30 plus cosine of 30. That gives 1.86. Let's simply say 1.9. We have the value for 30. After 30 we have 60. Then again, let's put 60 in place of these two angles. 60 here and 60 there. So this is equal to 2.23. So it's 2.2. After 60, 90. Then sine of 90 is equal to 1. Cosine of 90 is equal to 0. So it must be equal to 2. Let's check. 2 sine of 90 plus the bracket plus cosine of 90 is equal to 2. After 90 we have 120. Why I don't use the strategy that I did in the previous question? Because in the previous question we had only sine, and the sine of the angles that I add up to 180 is the same. But this time we have sine and cosine. We cannot depend on this trick. It's better to work out all of them. Then again, 2 sine of 120 plus cosine of 120 is equal to 1.2. After 120 we have 150. Then 2 sine of 150. 2 sine of 150 plus cosine of 150 is equal to 0.13. So let's say 0.1. And finally 180. Two sine of 180 plus cosine of 180 is equal to -1. Okay, we got all the points we need. Now let's start plotting them on this xy axis. The first point is 0 in x, 1 in y. 0 in x is here, 1 in y. This is the first point. The second point is 31.9. Then each small square is 0.2, so here is 1.8. 1.9 is halfway between 2 and 1.8. So it is here. 31.9 done. Then we have 62.2. 60 is on this line. Here is 2, here is 2.2. Then we have 90 and 2. 90 is here. 2 is here. Okay. 120 and 1.2. 120 is here. Here is 1. Here is 1.2. Something went wrong here. This should be here. This is above the 90. Next, 150 is 0.1. 150 and 0.1 is here. The first line is 0.2, so halfway is 0.1. And finally 180 and -1. 180 and -1, it is right here. 180 and -1. So we got the points we need. Now by joining these points together, we see the graph of 2 sine of x plus cosine of x. This graph is something like this. If you draw the graph of 2 sine of x plus cosine of x, means this graph, so it will be like an M, but since we draw between 0 to 180, it's one side of the M. But if you do it from negative 180 all the way to 180, we will have something like M. But now, as you see, we have only one side of the M. Okay, this is the graph of 2 sine of x plus cosine of x. The question has part A, B, then let's do the rest. Now this is the graph. For now, this is the most important thing. And then let's see what else should we do. Then part A, 2 sine of x plus cosine of x is equal to 1.5. 2 sine of x plus cosine of x is equal to 0. Then where 2 sine of x plus cosine of x is equal to 1.5, this is part A. When does this equal 1.5? And where does this 2 sine of x plus cosine of x is equal to 0? It equals 0 when it crosses the x-axis. So this is 50. This is 150. And here is 160. It's closer to 150. We can say it's 152, 153. All acceptable. As you see, this graph is crossing x-axis. Why here? Because on the x-axis, the result of y is 0. Look, these y's are not 0. That's why they are all above x-axis. But here, in this point, where the line crosses x-axis, it means y equals 0. Then the answer of this part, x, could be equal to 152 degrees. It's acceptable. 153, also acceptable. Up to 155, they are too close to 0 when we substitute in this function in place of x. And here, 1.5, where does this equals 1.5? 1.5 is here. Here is 1.2, 1.4, 1.6. Here is 1.6, here is 1.4. Halfway between them is 1.5. Where does this equals 1.5? So when the angle is, estimate the maximum value of y. The maximum value of y, look at the graph. The highest point is opposite 60. Here is the highest point. So it means this is the maximum value of y. If you remember, we got 2.2 for the 60. Look, this is the maximum value for y. There is not any number more than 2.2 in the y list. So the maximum value for y, which is the answer of part B, is 2.2. Part B, max of y is 2.2. Part C, find the value of x at which the maximum occurs. So where we get the maximum value of y while x is equal to 60. So the answer of part C, where does this maximum value of y occurs? Where does this maximum value of y occur? So it occurs above 60. Even when we go back to the table, you see 60 gives the maximum value of y. So it means 60 is the value of x that gives the maximum value of y. We got the answer of all the parts A, B, and C. I hope you find it useful. Comment below whatever question you have. Thank you for watching.